Hi everyone, it's Ashton. In this video I'm riding bear, and again I'm going to go over some exercises that I think each of you can use in your rides. Today I'm riding bear, and I'm going to start out here by just taking my feet in and out of the stirrups, roll my ankles, and put my feet back in. And I'll do that a few times. It's good to practice taking your feet in and out of the stirrups. You can see there as I put my feet back in, he kind of wants to hop off to the trot as he feels my legs move. So it's good to practice so that he stays in the same gait. And now I'm going to do some circles with my arms. It was a bit hard to see, but I started by putting my arm out to the side and then slowly did a circle backwards and forwards. Whenever you do this, you want to make sure that you're not going to spook your horse when you raise your arm. So just start with it slowly so you can assess if they're going to find that to be startling. And backwards. Prior to starting the video, I had done a little bit of warm-up in the walk and trot. So you guys can take a little extra time. There I'm rolling my shoulders back and down. That's probably my favorite exercise. And now I'll just allow bear to start off in the trot. And again, this is just on a nice soft contact. Again, just to review, a basic position. Weight is down in the heels, thumbs are on top, straight line bit to elbow. Leg is down and on. As you can see there, he spooks a little down at that end, so it's really important to have a secure lower leg so that I don't find myself on the ground. Crossing the diagonal, I wait till I get to the new wall to sit my 2 beats and change direction. That's one thing that, if I've taught you before, that's not news to you. I often say it's important to really think about when you're changing your posting diagonal and making sure that you're changing your leg aids with it. And so just being a little bit more attentive here as I go through that end where he likes to be a bit spooky. And now I'm going to start to ask him to work a little better leg to hand. So already you can see he's just a little bit more connected. One of the things I'm working on with Bear is getting him to use his head and neck a little bit better. He tends to want to make the bottom of his neck really long and shorten the top of his neck, which makes for an inverted horse. So regardless of where his head is, I want him to lengthen the top of his neck so that he has a nice crest. And so I achieve that by utilizing my inside leg to bend his body and maintaining a connection with my hand. Good. Now I'm asking him for a little bit more forward trot on the long side. So anytime I'm doing a warm-up, I tend to warm up longitudinal, so forwards and backwards, before I do the lateral. And again, asking him to go more forward, so I increase my leg pressure, but my whole leg pressure, leg up through my thigh. Good, and now you can see he's actually working quite well through his back. He's staying connected, crossing the diagonal, going forward again, and sit my 2 beats as I get to the rail. He's quite a fancy horse with the 4 white socks. Again, I'm a little bit aware of the spook here in the turn. You'll see it a few times in the video. I repeat the same thing this direction, so going forward. If any of you have ridden Bear before, you know that he's not as strong here going to the right side. So he shows us that because he's not as able to stay connected in the trot as he was on the left rein. So the next thing I'm going to show us here is the turn on the forehand. And I really like to use the turn on the forehand with novice riders or green horses because I find it a little bit more straightforward to teach than the turn on the haunches. And so I'm on the right rein. I'm going to halt 4 seconds, nice and square. Then I'm going to use the outside rein and leg to push his hind end around to change direction. That was very good. And that was off the left leg. You see him kind of flick his nose at the end there. He was a little bit over being asked to do that, but I just kind of stayed consistent as I asked him to walk forward. I'm going to do that again here. So standing, he was a little less patient here in this turn on the forehand. So I really take my time. And then outside bend, flexion, outside leg. The left leg here is passive. You know, it's there if I need it, but pretty good. Excellent. So the lateral movement that relates directly to the turn on the forehand is the leg yield. So in the leg yield here on the right rein, I'm going to bring both of my hands to the inside. So opening right rein, outside bearing rein, and then my right leg pushes him over. I'm going to repeat that in the walk. So the leg yield is when you bend the horses away from the way you're pushing them. So I'm using my right leg and I've got him bent right because I'm pushing him left. So I'm going to do it again here. So turning up the quarter line. Again, leg yield I think is kind of the first lateral move that you start teaching. It's a bit hard to see with my black gloves, but opening right rein, left bearing rein, right leg pushes him over to the wall. And you see how I'm keeping him really parallel to the wall. I'm not allowing his shoulder to lead very often. And that's really important. Regardless of how fast you get yourself back to the rail or you complete your leg yield, they must stay parallel to the wall. So again, working on getting him to keep his neck longer at the top, turning on the quarter line, both hands come to the inside, and my right leg pushes him over. So again, we know that his right side is a little bit weaker. Starting with the leg yield again, pushing him over. Yeah, there you can see I'm kind of resisting the connection. And when you make your leg yields and your lateral work, remember that it should be collected. So when you go sitting trot and you ask them to move over, if they start running away with you, you want to think about slowing it down again. Don't take your leg off, but you're going to want to close your fingers a little bit more firmly. All right, so now I'm changing direction and I'm going to do the leg yield off the left leg. So both hands come left and my left leg. And you can see I'm a little bit sticky here going into the spookier corner. I keep my sitting trot for a few extra steps. And then I use the posting trot as the reward, the release of the pressure back to the sitting trot. Again, trying to ask him to keep the top of his neck a little longer. Good. Good. And that's accomplished with just playing with the pressure between my left and right leg and also my left and right fingertips and my elbows. Now I'm doing one of my favorite exercises. I'm working without my stirrups. So if you're not super fit, this is great to do in small increments. So you could do this all in the sitting trot. You could go sitting trot to walk. You could do it in very short increments. What I'm doing here, you see I'm a little spooked there. Posting trot on the long side, sitting trot on the short side. So when you work without your stirrups, you want your leg to stay pretty similar in place as it would with the stirrup. Good. And he's working quite well through his back there. Good boy. And I'll change direction and repeat it the other way. Oh, maybe not yet. I think somebody was coming in the door. And that's the other thing, I'm riding here by myself, so I don't have a ton of other horses to work with, but I do have to pay attention to my surroundings. So the door opens and my horse is already spooking down at that end, and I've adjusted my plan. Posting trot again and sitting trot. And I wouldn't do work without the stirrups at the beginning of a ride. I would allow the horse to warm up before flopping around on their back without my stirrups. But I would do it every ride. If you do this every day, your legs are going to get a lot stronger, but you're also going to become a lot more proficient at riding without your stirrups. And that's important to do so that we're not depending on the stirrups for balance, that we're learning to balance from our leg. But also, if you were to lose your stirrup on course, you want to be able to continue without having to make a circle. So now I'm going to go ahead and start to work a little bit in the canter. I didn't do a ton in the canter today because I was quite happy with the work that he did do. So again, working at keeping the top of his neck longer. He's quite a beautiful horse, actually, when he works properly. Okay. And again, he's stronger going left. So I've actually started on his easier lead on purpose. And we talked a little bit about seats the last time. What you'll see when he gets into these spooky corners, I sit so that my seat helps me when he gets spooky like he did there in the corner. And then when he gets a little bit easier, I go up into my half seat. But I'm going to repeat the leg yields in the canter. They're a bit harder to see in the canter. And when a horse spooks, it's important that it's really about keeping their head and neck straight and using your inside leg. So that's where the leg yield is really a valid and valuable exercise. It teaches the horse to move away from your inside leg without getting quick, right? Good. Okay. So both hands come to the inside, opening left rein, left leg. And yeah, he wants to get twisty with his shoulders, specifically going into that turn. I lighten my seat once I feel him take a deep breath. I sit for my leg yield exercise. Good. Oh, he really didn't like that. He tossed his head. Oh, and he broke because he said, oh, that's really hard work. That's okay. Now, when I'm riding a horse and they break like that, I give them a bit of a kick, mostly to teach them not to break. Right? I'm not going to let him get away with breaking multiple times in a ride. He breaks, I kind of say like, let's get going here, buddy. Leg yield again. Now these leg yields are hard. That's why I say I didn't do a ton of canter. But you can start to see how he's working a little bit better leg to hand. The top of his neck is staying a bit longer. Great. And though I may not spend this much time on leg yields every ride, I do probably do some sort of variation of lateral work every ride. Depending on the horse, that's a beautiful trot there. Depending on the horse, what they need. I chose the leg yields for this horse because he is the type that gets really crooked, so I wanted to school him off my leg. Now, when I go on the right lead, he's really different going right. You might not see it, but for any of you who have ridden Bear, you will know that he tends to want to fall in to the right. And what a lot of people do to fix that is they pull on the outside rein. But if we take his head left, that actually pushes his body more to the inside. So what I'm really trying to do is ride his head and neck straight from my right leg into my left hand. And I'm trying to keep his head and neck as straight as I can from his wither. And I'm trying to push him out from my inside leg. And you can kind of see he starts to tilt his head a little bit. He's just not as strong this direction. I'm going to start to do the leg yields. Good. And then notice that when, even here as I'm watching the video and doing the voiceover second, when I said good, it was at the same moment that I lightened my seat. So pay attention to the moments that I lightened my seat because that is the reward. So I'm just going to bring him back to the walk, and I'm going to work on one last thing here before we're finished. And you can see him kind of step off into the trot there a few times when I still wanted him to be in the walk. And that's because he was responding to my leg aids. You know, he finds it easier to step into trot than he does to walk forward. So now I'm going to try to work on lengthening and shortening my stride. And I'm going to try to identify that from the sitting canter being collection and the half seat being a little bit more forward. I'm doing it on a circle, so I maybe didn't get as forward as I would have liked. And again, you know, the quality of the canter here on this side isn't the best. So when I ask him for collection, I'm using my right leg. Again, a little kick there so he doesn't break and he gets a little angry. Asking for collection, there we get it a little. Good, and then you see me lighten right away, right? So when he does it the right way, I say thank you by lightening my seat. But to ask for the collection, I sit gently. I really use my inside leg to bend the horse. And then I'm using outside rein to collect. Good. Both legs supporting. It's not just the one. Good. And then he trots off there really nice. And I'm going to change direction. And again, he's still not loving that end. So I go sitting trot a few steps. Good. And I'll go lengthen and shorten again. So I'm in a nice forward canter in the half seat. And then I will eventually sink in, put my leg on, bend him, and then ask him to collect. And I'm purposefully finishing on the left lead so that he finishes on something that's easy. So he leaves the riding lesson or the schooling ride by doing something that he enjoys. Whoa, like spooking. But again, you gotta have your legs on and down and around the horse so that those little spooks you see, and I just keep working, right? Doesn't finish the ride with a spook. He works through it. He finishes on a nice trot. Really quite lovely in the trot, actually. Looks better than it felt. Looks better on the video than it felt in the moment. So that's great. And again, you see him working on the same thing. Even though he's a little longer, hoping that he stays long across his top line rather than long on the bottom side of his neck and shortening his top line, which creates an inverted horse. Now, that was quite a good ride for Bear today. I hope you all take something from that and can implement it into your next ride.